Hi, I'm Jen. I'm a digital artist and I make coloring books. I actually started my small business almost 4 years ago, and while I didn't start off with making coloring books, once I did, I immediately realized that this is what I wanted to do. And since then, I've hand drawn and released 5 different coloring books and have plans to make more just like them in the future. But recently, I made a new mini coloring book all about fruits and veggies, and I really love the small size of it. I think it is perfect for filling in small pockets of your day with just some creativity. So today, I want to make a new one called The Perfect Beach Day using my iPad, and I'd like for you to join me for the journey. My process to create a new coloring book, whether it is a normal sized or a mini version like this, it always begins with a little brainstorm session where I spend some time jotting down whatever comes to mind that is relevant to the theme. So I'm just going to go ahead and set a timer for about 5 minutes and work on making my list of ideas. I'll write down any words or scribble a little doodle to get the ball rolling and figure out what ideas that I'd like to make. Now, I only need 6 ideas since this will be a mini coloring book, so I don't need a super long list or a ton of ideas, but often I do come up with more than necessary just so that I have some options and make sure that I create the best set of coloring pages. Now, with a nice list going, I can start making some rough sketches to get a sense of what the pages will look like. These are basically thumbnail sketches, which are meant to be quick and rough, and just to help explore different ideas and compositions before committing to a more detailed piece. It is an important step because sometimes you may think you have the perfect concept, but when it comes to executing it, it may not come across the same as it did in your mind. Now, when it comes to starting new projects, I am a huge planner person, and I personally like to organize all of my thoughts and tasks in a central place that I can reference throughout the course of my project. This just helps me make sure that I stay on top of everything that I need to do to accomplish my goals, but also make sure that nothing, slips through the cracks. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a visual mood board with all the details and tasks that I need to do, as well as some references that I can use when I do my more refined digital sketches next. In addition to keeping me on track, planning also helps me from getting too overwhelmed or stressed. My coloring books are all about appreciating the slow and simple moments, so I like to reflect that in my process too. So far, I've done a lot of ideating, writing, and planning, which are all important steps of my process, of course. But now it is time for the fun, creative bit where I start to do the more refined digital sketches on my iPad using Procreate. Basically, this means that I turn my rough sketches into more refined and polished sketches. Here's where I begin to focus more on the details and make most of my final decisions on the composition of each page. My coloring books aren't usually super complex or very detailed, but with these mini versions, I definitely lean more into creating simpler pages because there just isn't as much space per page. Additionally, these mini coloring books are meant to be easier and take less time to color, so I want to make sure that the details are not super small nor too plentiful. But I also want to find and strike that balance and make sure that there are just enough details per page so that you understand what's being depicted and the story that I'm trying to tell. Now, with the sketches done, we can move on to one of the final stages and begin to bring all these pages to life and work on the final line art. Creating my sketches and working through my ideas is one of the most important stages of my process to me because I want to create something that you will all love and enjoy. Now, at this point, a lot of the hard work is already done, and basically all I have to do is trace my refined sketches. This is definitely the easiest and usually the quickest part, and it all happens here on my iPad. As a digital artist, my iPad is definitely the star of the show, and it's the most important tool that I use throughout all of my work, but most definitely in making my coloring books, and I love to pair it with accessories that enhance my workflow. That's why I am so happy to be working with Moft, the sponsor of today's video. Moft creates easy-to-use origami-style accessories designed to improve the carry experience and enable artists and creatives like you and me to be more efficient in flexible working situations. You may have seen me using their accessories like their tripod stand for my phone or the float folio on my iPad previously, and I really love and use both almost daily. But they recently came out with a new version called the Dynamic Folio. It's slim, lightweight, and because of its origami-style design, it can fold into various angles to fit all of your creative needs. But instead of just talking about it, let me show you some of my favorite ways to use it. First, with floating creation mode, my iPad sits at an elevated position, which is great for when I'm making art and have those long drawing sessions like when I'm making a new coloring book. I also like to switch it to theater mode, which puts my iPad at the perfect angle to watch videos, look up references, or more commonly for me, as a second screen with my computer. But my top favorite, and the one that I definitely use the most, is the dual screen mode because it gives me the perfect place to prop my phone while I draw so that I can use it for things like referencing my mood board, or more realistically, to watch a movie or TV show as I make progress on my coloring book. Additionally, I really love the magnetic pencil holder because it not only secures and protects my Apple Pencil, but it also doubles as a straight edge ruler that I can use for things like estimating the dimensions of a sticker. The Dynamic Folio is probably the best, most portable and versatile case that I've ever used, so if you too want to turn your flat iPad into the perfect creative station, I have a discount code that you can use to get 10% off when you use the link below. So thank you to Moft for sponsoring this video and for creating my new favorite folio case. Now let's get back to finishing up these coloring pages. So something else that I like to keep in mind when creating my coloring pages is consistency without being too repetitive. What I mean by that, for example, is that I like the proportions and look of my characters to remain the same, or at least similar throughout all of my books. To help with this, I actually created a character sheet that has my characters in different positions and poses, and I like to reference it whenever I make a new page, just to help me keep that consistent look. I do a similar thing with other common objects and things in my books. For example, the sun that appears in my art and in my books has remained fairly the same. I've only really changed the face a bit, but it's basically the same sun throughout all my books. Another example would be with things like clouds, trees, flowers, bushes, etc. And for these things, I like for them to look similar in the universe of Fructus illustration. So oftentimes, I'll just reference those elements from previous pages or art pieces, but not copy it exactly because, like I said, I want consistency without being repetitive. And having the same exact thing just copied and pasted throughout my books is not really a look that I'm looking for. I want each one to kind of be a little bit unique and different and fit the page more nicely. Another thing that I like to note when I create new coloring pages is that I don't like to overcomplicate things. By this I mean I like to simplify things and not add too many details, and instead leave them up to whoever will color the page. So for example, let's say my page has some kind of wood element in it. It can be a tree, some flooring, or whatever might be made of wood. I'll usually leave it with as little detail as possible, and I don't draw things in like the wood grain. Another instance would be with most bushes. I just draw the basic shape and outline of them, and I don't usually fill them up with flowers or fruits, but instead leave them up for you to decide on how you want them to look and what elements you'd like to add to them. Okay, so I just finished all of the line art for all the pages and the cover, so now we can go ahead and print it all out and see the final book all together. To set up for printing, I'm actually going to export all of my artwork and send it to my computer, where I'll upload it all onto Canva so that I can arrange the pages and add text. Once I have everything exactly where I want it, I'll then export everything as a PDF and upload it onto this zine arranger. What this does is that it basically sets up my pages so that I can print it front and back and use just 2 sheets of paper. And once printed, I'll just cut the sheets in half, trim the ends, and assemble the pages in the correct order. To hold it all together, I'll just place 2 staples right in the middle. And here we have the Perfect Beach Day mini coloring book, where each page illustrates a fun activity or moment that would make for a great day by the sea. I've really enjoyed creating this new mini coloring book. I think it'll suit any busy schedule where finding long chunks of time for creativity kind of difficult, because these pages are super small but super fun. Typically, for my regular size coloring books, it takes me about 2 to 3 hours to complete. And I know, that's mostly because I'm extra and I like to add more details, but still, that is a long time. But these little pages have taken me probably less than half that time and are definitely a low pressure alternative when you just want to relax and color. So thank you so much for watching and for coming along as I make my new mini coloring book. I like to create more of these because they're really just so fun to make and to use. So be sure to leave the crayon emoji in the comments below so that I know you enjoyed this video and want to see more. Lastly, don't forget to check out the dynamic folio from Moft if you're looking to improve your creative experience, and don't forget to use the discount code to get some savings. Thank you again for watching. I hope you have a creative day, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!